here with Steve Young. Needs no introduction, but sometimes he does. I mean, maybe in the esports world, right? Because this is something that's pretty new for you all.
Well, what's amazing is my two boys. I have a 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, and both of them are not interested in sports. They're not interested in playing sports. My oldest one was had a Twitch handle, and he had like 3,000 followers, and he's an entertainer. Now he wants to go into music theater, and he's a gamer. And then my younger one is 100% gamer. He wants to go to school for it. So for me, I've had to transition and see the incredible possibilities that Skillshot and other companies are providing an opportunity for jobs in the future, for professional. I mean, so to me, you guys are my hero. Like I'm all focused on this, like, because that's my, all politics are local. What happens in my family is what really matters to me. And for my family, it's really getting these kids that my boys love the technology. My oldest just started, he said, I'm going to publish a game. I'm going to make a game. So he started drawing last week on his iPad. He started from scratch. And I'm like, that's what he loves. And I told him he's going to be a writer. And there's writing in the gaming industry. There's publishing. There's coding. There's art. There's all the parts of it. And so, you got the right guy when you got me going on this.
I come from a sports background too. I played at UCLA soccer, and so that was my thing. But I'm curious how, like, as a parent, the transition of expecting your kids to play traditional sports and then being so accepting. You seem like you're on the much more accepting path than a lot of parents I would expect
my generation of parents are going to be the ones that look down on it and don't think much of it. And the next generation will recognize what the truth is. This is a tremendous opportunity. Now, are there issues that you have to be aware of? Like anything, you can overtrain in soccer. Like anything, you can get out of whack. So to me, the opportunities, parents need to see that there's incredible opportunities in the gaming industry for their kids that love it. That's an attraction, and the parents know it. It's like my kid and in a way that's just, and so use that as a stepping stone or a leg up to all these other publishing, art, writing. It's all part of the gaming industry that you can use this fixation, this fascination with gaming can leap into all these other places. That's why the parents today, my age, need to recognize that do not be late on this, because you're just being truly old-fashioned. It is, and I'm not trying to say something, I'm trying to fool you or fake you out. This is like something that you need to get on board with, because the opportunities are immense.
Wow, I mean, no introduction and no words after that. Thank you so much, Steve. Drop the mic, exactly. Thank you so much. And if you look inside, the imagination has certainly been fulfilled.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is John St. Pierre. A little introduction there by Steve Young to kind of here today. And when I watched that video that was shared to me by Brian Scott over at Great Bay, it kind of hit me square in the eyes for sure as well, in terms of don't be old-fashioned and don't miss the boat. But more importantly, a stepping stone. That this is a stepping stone for kids in our community, and specifically as a parent myself, my kids. I like the adage: if you can't beat them, join them. So that's what we started to do. But my name is John St. Pierre, and I'm going to be your host and moderator for tonight's webinar. I appreciate everybody that's been joining us and taking time out of their schedules. Realize it's 7 o'clock in the evening. We thought this would be the best time for everybody to group together and talk about esports, specifically in the state of New Hampshire, and where esports is going, not only in New Hampshire, but also regionally and globally, and how we in New Hampshire can be leaders in our communities with our kids, in our academic institutions, and beyond. So again, my name is John St. Pierre. I'm a traditional sports management entrepreneur, played ice hockey myself, was involved in sports management, running events in traditional sports like hockey, soccer, lacrosse across the globe, and started seeing what was going on in esports, but couldn't really figure it out for quite a while. All I knew is I would yell at my kids for playing Fortnite for 8 hours in the basement and tell them to get off their computers and get outside. And that was a little bit about myself. And really, I was trying to figure out, if I can't beat them, how do I join them? Because I started seeing where technology was going, and artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, programming, engineering, design, cryptocurrency. And I was starting to get all wrapped up in esports as a tool and a mechanism, just like Steve Young talked about, a stepping stone potentially to their interest in technologies, and met Helix Esports Academy down in Gillette Stadium, Patriot Place, where they run Helix Esports Center in partnership with the Kraft family there, where they run Boston Uprising, their esports team, and started investigating it a little bit more, and quickly realized that in New Hampshire, we're a little bit behind probably where we should be on a national scale as relates to this new sport that might be in the Paris Olympics in 2024 as a sport. And so decided to open up Helix Esports Academy that's based here in Exeter, New Hampshire. I'm sitting in that academy as I speak here this evening with you guys. And I'm very excited to share with you guys a panel of guest speakers here that we brought on today to talk about really what is going on in esports across New England at the high school level as well as the collegiate levels. So I'd like to introduce our guest. The first guest we have tonight is Tim Edmonds, who is the Director of Programming at Helix Esports. Tim is a Harvard student athlete, played traditional sport at Harvard, graduated from Harvard, saw what was going on in esports with his passion, and again, became the Director of Programming at Helix Esports. And Tim tonight is going to talk a lot about what is going on in Massachusetts, a little bit of, as well in New Jersey, because Helix has locations in New Jersey, and the leagues that they're forming, not at necessarily at a club level, but at a varsity level. So Tim, thanks for joining us tonight. Can you give us a little bit of an intro for yourself as well?
Absolutely. Thanks, John, and thanks for having us tonight. Really excited to be here. My name is Tim Edmonds. Like John said, I did 4 years at Harvard University where I was playing on the varsity lacrosse team. As I started getting to the tail end of my career, of my college career there, I started really thinking about what I wanted to do. And I constantly came back to gaming. I did an internship my sophomore year that had me kind of researching the space. And that's when I learned about Twitch and about kind of athletes going on there and streaming on Twitch and just the popularity of it. And as a longtime gamer and a passionate video game player, that was something I was really interested in. So I started really doing my research, really started to understand the space. And then towards the end of, after I graduated, I was really looking for a job, couldn't really find one. And then ended up actually getting a job with the New York Excelsior at their pop-up shop in Brooklyn as the cashier. And then from there, about 2 weeks later, an old teammate of mine came in named Murphy Vandervelde, and him and his dad and his brother were starting this venture called Helix Esports. And what we have is several different LAN centers now, LAN being local area network, with the one in New Jersey has about 100 top of the line HP Omen PCs, and people come in and buy time to play on them. We also have a center in Foxborough, Mass. And then we met with John and started one up in Exeter as well. And then we have one in Massachusetts at a place called The Base. So we have a couple different footprints there. And since the start, I've kind of been involved all over the place, doing tournaments, running events. But as we kept going, I started getting really involved in the interscholastic side, working with high schools, working with collegiate institutions, trying to advance the sport. And it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm really excited to talk about it tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Look forward to diving deeper into that. Our next panelist is Jesse. Jesse is the head coach at Great Bay Community College of their Varsity Esports program, which is a new program that was launched here the past couple of years. Jesse, much like all of the panelists tonight, also is a varsity traditional sport athlete with a passion for esports, and is now a varsity college coach. So Jesse, please tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing at Great Bay.
Thanks, John. It's really a pleasure to be here. I love every opportunity I get to talk about esports. It's like you said, I played traditional sports from 5th grade and local youth organizations all the way through high school. I played varsity football. And then when I found myself in college, I was still playing games actively with friends, but the scene wasn't really grown to be a part of it as a team activity anymore. So I really missed that camaraderie that I got from my high school sports, and I couldn't really bring them over. So it's really awesome to see that that's now offered at a collegiate level and in some places in the United States at a high school and middle school level. A little bit about me. I finished my associate's degree at Great Bay, and then I went on to Southern New Hampshire, where I got my bachelor's in accounting with a focus in forensic accounting. And I focused on accounting because I really liked the opportunity that it gave me in any industry. No matter what you do, if they're making they have an accountant. You can work in their back office doing any sort of financial paperwork for them. So it's unfortunate that when I was going through my college career that degrees in esports and esports management weren't offered, because like Tim said, there's so many opportunities in the space. It from engineering, coding, world design of making the game and creating it, all the way to advertising and uh, just finance on the back end. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and talk about esports.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. And then last but certainly not least, we have Sultan Akhtar. Sultan just graduated his MBA in sports management from SNU, Southern New Hampshire University, and was captain of the Varsity League of Legends their team while he was a student. And now he's evolved to managing the new esports arena at SNU that they built here just recently, which I think applies to a lot of groups that are looking, or schools that are looking to build their programs as well, and the challenges that come along with starting a program and building an arena, and the recruiting and everything that goes along with that. So Sultan, thanks for joining us. Please give us your intro, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, John. It's awesome to be here. As John said, my name's Sultan Akhtar, recent graduate from Southern New Hampshire University with their MBA program. And much like Jesse, much like Tim, I've been an avid gamer ever since I was a little kid, playing Pokemon, playing Mario. And my parents, although they were the type that was like, no, you got to get out, you got to go do sports, you got to go play, get active. And I was like, okay. So I played many different sports throughout my entire life. I played varsity tennis in high school. I played basketball recreationally. But in college, my freshman year, that was really a moment where I said, what can I do that really is competitive, but also gaming? And I found esports. And after our first practice on this club team in the gaming club, I was hooked, absolutely hooked on the aspect of it. And after then, it just, I decided to take over all our teams on campus. I said, I'll give them the support they need, find scheduling for them, find scrimmages for them, sign them up for tournaments. And through that, I just ended up going for a career in it. I wanted to do something for my life that involved gaming. So I've worn a bunch of different hats throughout my career in collegiate esports, and from coaching, from coordinating events, from managing our space on campus, and from playing as a collegiate athlete at a really high level, being top 12 in the country in the game. It's been quite a journey. So I'm always looking to give any information I can to anybody that's looking. So thank you again, and it's awesome to be here.
Great, thank you very much for that. And let's dive right into a lot of questions I have that we've collected from different people as well. But I really want to start, the focus of tonight is really esports in our academic institutions. And through some of my research, which is not, fully extensive, but I did a good amount of research here in New Hampshire, and even talking to national governing bodies in esports, or national leagues. And when I talked about New Hampshire, it was kind of like a silence. There was really no presence of middle schools or high schools in having varsity or club esports programs. So I guess my first question, obviously SNU and Great Bay, you guys have started one, and you guys are in New Hampshire, so the collegiate level has started programs. But can we talk a little bit, and maybe Tim, with your experience with high schools, like why should middle schools and high schools or academic institutions consider implementing an esports program? What's the benefit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefits are almost endless. So just to give a bit of background information, at Helix Esports, our first location was in North Bergen, New Jersey. And when we first opened, we had a teacher at North Bergen High School who came in and said, listen, we have a club program at North Bergen, esports program. Would we be able to come in and start practicing in your facility to see if we can get some momentum? And so we said, absolutely. So they started coming in, they hosted a tryout. They had like 30 or 40 kids come in, and they formed a team. And then pretty soon after that, we had Hoboken High School giving us a call because they heard that North Bergen, their town rival, had a team. So they were like, wow, we need to get involved. And the next thing, you had Union City. And we built this high school league that was in person, where they were coming in twice, 3 times a week and practicing as a 40, 50 group of individuals. So at that point, it becomes just like if I was on my hockey team at my school, or I was on my lacrosse team at school, or my football team at school. And all the benefits that you get from being on that football team, it's just about the same benefits you get as being a part of the esports team. You create a community of like-minded individuals who are trying to achieve a similar goal of advancing this program. And at the end of the day, they're just there to have an awesome time. But on top of that, as we mentioned before, there's almost limitless job opportunities afterwards. So you can go from a high school program nowadays, as we know with the panelists on now, there's collegiate programs. And then even after that, there's tons of job opportunities. So I think there's a lot of benefits, but just to name a few there, just to get us started.
Yeah, that's great. And Jesse and Sultan, I'd love to hear from you guys. I mean, you guys, when you were in high school as big esports enthusiasts, didn't have a program to play in, right? And so there are a lot of students in schools today who don't necessarily play football or hockey or soccer, but they play esports. And so I'd love to hear your opinions. I mean, does that play into why schools should create a program? Because maybe there's some students in their body that could be playing a varsity sport that they're passionate about, but the school doesn't have it.
Sultan, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, sure. So from a high school point of view, and thinking from my collegiate side, it's one of the biggest tools that we look for when recruitment, for example, is experience in esports. Experience, whether you're playing games or even if you're experienced in playing traditional sports. And a lot of schools nowadays, including SNU, and I'm not sure if Great Bay does, but there's schools offering thousands of dollars in scholarship money that students are missing out on. We want to recruit players. We want to recruit, very talented players. And if they don't have the background, then they might miss out on that opportunity. So from a high school perspective, they're missing out on just having their students engage with some of these colleges that they could be offered thousands of dollars of scholarships. But other than that, it's the technical skills of being able to use computers. It's the communication skills, the leadership skills, the teamwork skills that they get from playing on those teams if they're not playing on the traditional sports team. So there's definitely many attributes there. If you want to continue on, Jesse.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I feel that every skill I gained from playing football at a varsity level in high school is directly related to something I've also learned in the capacity of esports. Not to say one is a better tool of teaching it than the other. I don't think that's the case. But I know that if esports was offered for me at a high school level, I would have played football as well, but I would have also taken advantage of that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not at the level where you're going to become a professional gamer, that doesn't mean you don't still gain the soft skills that come with playing at a competitive level or just playing video games at a friendly level and then trying to grow it to a competitive level. You gain massive amounts of communication skills, understanding, meeting deadlines, being able to analytically think at a rapid pace and then act on your decision, even if it might not be the correct decision at that time. You learn to follow through and really make the best out of it and try and get out of a tight predicament. So I think just if anyone who plays video games can take that alone from it, you're immensely better off. So I think
Yeah,
esports is awesome.
yeah, that's great. And Sultan talked about it a little bit. The a couple of statistics that I've heard based on what you guys have talked about is, I think it's and this statistic has moved. So for people who answered the poll question of how many schools have scholarships for esports, some of the published statistics are 170. I haven't heard, but I think that statistic is old. I think the number keeps moving. So it could be over 200 by now, but there were about 25% of our attendees tonight who didn't even know there was such a thing as esports scholarships, right? And I didn't certainly either. I was flabbergasted by that statistic. But I also think from a collegiate level, what's interesting, Jesse, to talk about what you've talked about and all the skills that are developed are that 67% of STEM majors, right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, are esports or play esports, I guess I should say, right? And I find that to be an amazing statistic. So a lot of schools are trying to build up their STEM programs. I believe have created these varsity programs to attract more students into their school. A couple other examples are, there are probably, my wife went to Ohio State, so I'll use Ohio State. There's probably 100 players on the football team at Ohio State, but there's probably 10,000 students at Ohio State that play esports, right? The numbers are phenomenal when you look in the grand scheme of things. So is that why colleges have started these programs? Like, what was the motivation for Great Bay and SNU as an example? Because there are two examples here in New Hampshire, but there are hundreds across the country. It's booming like crazy. Why are colleges starting esports programs? Who wants to take that one?
I'll let you start off, Jesse, if you would like to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the main thing is that there's interest, right? So if you know that there's part of your student body that wants to do anything and you have the ability to offer it, then you should. And then on top of it, when it's an activity that you can offer that has these numerous benefits, then you definitely should. So one, we use it as a recruiting tool. We love to have local kids who want to play and compete at a competitive level. We love to have them come in and bring that to the table. It's also, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to jump in on it, Sultan?
Yeah, definitely. Well, as Jesse said, there's the recruiting aspect, which we do fairly heavily at SNU, but also there's different real world applications that we try to drive within our program. We have a content team at SNU, which is comprised of about 5 or 6 different students, but they are paid student workers who develop all our content for SNU. And that's an ever-changing list of students that once they graduate, we fill in new students, and they get real world application from that, and they can use that in their jobs for graphic design, from marketing materials, whatever they would like to use that for in their careers. From there, it's also from the competitive nature. The students on our teams, they are sometimes managing their teams by themselves. They're leading their teams and they're controlling a lot of these practices, whereas we're trying to organize them. We're trying to make sure they have the tools in order for them to succeed. So that's kind of the different aspects that these students are getting from these programs. But the real when I was a student, it was creating buy-in from all the different staff and the different uh, higher management that wanted to create this. And when I came to them, I said, we have 40 to 50 students on campus that is interested in creating this program. And they said, wow, that's actually quite a lot. And once we gave them the type of time that we were putting in for practices for our matches, and they started looking at our games, they're like, there's general interest here. So I think it's a mixture of recruitment. It's a mixture of interest on campus. It's also it's an opportunity for students to grow from these programs, whether it's soft skills or work skills or whatever skills that they're going to acquire. There's different avenues for success for each of the students that come into these programs.
Yeah, I certainly would love to dive a little bit into that, Sultan, as we keep going, because how can schools get started? I've heard that a lot of times it's actually the student body or one of the teachers who also plays esports who actually starts the program within the school versus it coming from the sports department or the principal administration of the school. It's usually, leadership ambassadors within the school that kind of get it going. So it's kind of interesting that I hear your story being the same. That it seems like the front movers are really student leadership run a little bit, or teacher leadership run. Is that accurate?
I would absolutely agree. And if you look at some of the schools in the country that have had programs for 5 to 7 to 10 years, those programs were started by students. They were not started by the faculty because they didn't know that there was such a big interest on campus. So now you're starting to see athletic programs. They're saying, oh, we should start this. When back 5-7 years ago, it was students that said we should start this. So definitely looking at it, student focus. If it's student driven and it's student focus, then the program's going to be successful. You have a community on campuses that really want something. They want some sort of support, whether it be just one coach or one director or someone that's looking out for them, maybe a small budget. It's something that's just saying the school is supporting you. It doesn't matter what kind of support it is. It's just making sure that the students know that they have their student body looking out for them. They have the school body looking out for them. So I think there's that aspect that's really important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sharing this on my screen. Hopefully you guys can all see it, which was shared with me by you, Tim. Really esports related professions. And if you think the example I like to give is the NFL. The NFL is a huge monster of a sports industry, and you think about all the professions in the NFL business, right? When it goes to broadcasting and financial and legal and marketing and sales and everything else. And then you think about the statistic that Sultan and I were talking about a little bit earlier, is that in 2019, there were 100 million people who viewed the League of Legends finals. That's more than the Super Bowl. And I didn't even know what League of Legends was in 2019. And that's one sport of a variety of sports. So when you think about the ecosystem that's being built here in esports, Tim, can you share with us a little bit? I mean, you shared this with me. It seems to me like careers in esports and colleges with sports management degrees now in esports is just exploding. And I guess the last piece I'll throw before I throw it over to you is, you know, I'm not on TikTok, the social media platform that the kids are on today. But one thing I keep hearing before is, you know, the kids that are on TikTok today are going to be 25 and 30 and 35 and 40 years old in the next, you know, 2 decades. And that's going to really be the future generation, right? That's coming up. And it feels like esports is on that same track. So you talk to us a little bit about careers in esports, and is this legitimate? I mean, is this really a lot of opportunities that you think are viable for students in their future?
Absolutely, and I think this ties back to why high schools, why colleges should have programs. I mean, you take a look at this chart; it's pretty stunning. And like you said, John, you compared it to the NFL. I mean, you have an NFL game. Think about how many people are on the back end making that NFL game happen and making that live broadcast happen. And as you said, League of Legends had 100 million viewers. Being a producer on the back end of that, that's a very, very significant job. So I think, I mean, and on top of that, esports right now is growing massively, but it's still considered to be maybe in its infancy. So I think we see a ton of opportunities right now. And I think in the future, 5, 10, 15 years, I really do think the opportunities will be astronomical. So I think you take one look at this chart, and this is a chart I've showed a lot of people, because when I first took a look at this, I was stunned. And just to tie this back with the league we run in person in our facilities, this was a major focus of ours. So we had, not only were kids able to come in and play and compete as a group, but we were also having kids who maybe wanted to manage the team, or maybe wanted to make sure that the team's stream out to Twitch was working properly. So then maybe when they graduate, they can they have a little bit of experience they can put on a resume. They say, I was my esports team manager. I made sure the stream was always on point, always working. And they're going to be like, oh, well, that's a skill that we actually need. So I think that there are currently a lot of opportunities, and I think there's going to be a lot more as we go.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Tim. I mean, it's phenomenal to hear everything you're talking about. I remember sitting down once with a gamer that we were interviewing to be a coach here at our esports center, and he started talking to us about casting, and we're like, what are you talking about casting? And it kind of dawned on me, yeah, these esports games also have color commentary, just like if you're watching an NFL game or an NHL game, right? You got play-by-play, there's so many different components people don't actually think about from a communications perspective, as someone talked about a little bit earlier, and just that communication component, team group activity, all that kind of stuff. So I love that. Can you tell us a little bit more, what is going on in Massachusetts? Because I'm actually really impressed and shocked at how Massachusetts has somewhat evolved with esports in their schools versus New Hampshire. We're right next to each other. What's going on down there in New Jersey, Massachusetts? Because you've been heavily involved in the types of schools and what they're doing exactly.
I think for New Jersey specifically, I think the fact that we had that center and schools were immediately coming in, and then were able to physically with their eyes see other schools in the facility. And then we would have, for example, these track meet style competitions where all the schools in our league, Hoboken, Union City, North Bergen, they'd all come in and they'd compete in Overwatch, League of Legends, Super Smash Ultimate, Fortnite, and Rocket League. And so they'd come in and it was this awesome atmosphere where they're competing and kids are having a great time. So teachers would come out, and then they would actually invite maybe the principal or the superintendent. And they would come and they would see all these kids having just the best time ever. And like immediately we're super impressed and we're like completely bought in. So they had that support, and it just increased the momentum. I think we've maybe taken like a minor step back because of COVID, because we weren't able to be in person like that. But I think online gaming is obviously at a massive peak right now. So I don't think it's slowed down that much. And then in Massachusetts, we were aiming to do the same exact thing. I've spoken with a lot of schools that have programs. I think part of that is because there's online leagues that have been available maybe in those states for the past maybe year or 2 years, so that they've already started to gain that momentum. But I think when we can go back to having these in-person awesome tournaments and people can see the atmosphere and feel the atmosphere, I think that's gonna allow us to take off some more as well.
Yeah, that's great, Tim, and I love the visual of a track style meet competition, right? Where you have the different events, but then you have the different teams coming in, competing, going back to their team, even though they're on maybe playing a different esport. Their school is over here, whereas this school, you can have leaderboards. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things you could do. Love that, and it strikes me too that unfortunately I wasn't a great track athlete. I wasn't that fast of a runner. But even going back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, one of the things that I've heard from Murphy, the CEO of Helix Esports, that I think really connected with me, and I think will really connect with the attendees we have here tonight, is esports is the great equalizer. Can you guys tell me a little bit about what that meant? Because when I heard that for the first time, I thought it was amazing. And in today's world, we need some stuff to kind of equalize people and put everybody on the same playing field. Jesse, Sultan, Tim, who wants to jump in on that one? I'd love to understand a little bit more about why esports is seen as the great equalizer.
I can jump on that first if you guys would like.
Please.
So for me, as a high school football player, that's a perfect example of how football is not an equalizer. I was on the field the same amount of time, if not more, than some athletes, and other people are just gifted genetically beyond me. So I wasn't able to compete, and you're never going to see me walking into Patriots Place with a Patriots uniform on. It's just not going to happen. But video games are awesome because if you put the time and the dedication and the hard work in, it doesn't matter. Race, creed, gender, anything. It's all about the effort you put in. And that's what I really like about esports. And it also, too, as Sultan mentioned earlier, where it brings people together. Like I have two separate athletes on my team who they are interested in video games, but they don't feel that they can compete at a collegiate level. So one runs all of our streams, like Sultan said, and and then we have another student who does all of our graphic design for those streams. If we're going to do any type of team advertisement, he helps and contributes there. And while neither of them have a keyboard and a mouse in hand and they're competing in the game, they're every much a part of that team. Whereas if you were in high school and you really like graphic design, you might not feel that you are part of that team mentality, even if you have a club to join. Whereas now, if you have that, you gain that opportunity.
Love that.
I'd love to hop and continue about that. When SNU, we first were starting our program, we launched a questionnaire to our student population on campus, and just to see what interest was like, and we got over 200 students that were interested in esports. Now 100 of them, they wanted to play, they were avid about playing, but we had 100 who just wanted to watch. We had 100 spectators who were just like, we love gaming, we want to watch gaming happen. So that was really interesting to us. So when we went into creation of our space, we said, how can we make it so that not only do the players have a place to practice, a place to play, but also how can we make it a spectator sport? How can we allow students to come in person, enjoy the community, hang out with their friends, and just watch esports? So I think from an equalizing point of view, it's not just a playing versus watching, but it is those, and it's also the fact that every team, every program, they can be multi-gender. They can be. We've had students that have the inability to use some bodily functions, but we have certain keyboards that allow them to play even though they don't have a few fingers, or if there's something. Awesome. Yeah, it's really an awesome experience to allow some of these students that wouldn't have the opportunity to play football or soccer or baseball because maybe they're in a wheelchair, but they can play at a competitively high level with our esports team. So it's such an engrossing community. It's an awesome community to be a part of, and I love being a part of it. So it's a really awesome experience.
Yeah, that's great, Sultan. It strikes me. I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and it's specifically relevant right now with COVID, where kids aren't interacting as much as they used to. But there's also a mental health component to this. And would you rather your students, go home and go in the basement? And this is the way I'd view it anyway, as a parent, right? Go home, go in the basement, eat potato chips, and game by yourself. Maybe you're on a headphone with people, but you're kind of by yourself, right? Even though you may be interacting with people on the headsets, which I understand happens, versus be part of a community at your school. And I love what you also talked about, which I think is a phenomenal idea. I took it down, was for schools. One way to get started is do a student questionnaire with your captive students, like who's interested in this. And then the last piece is, you will be amazed. I mean, we used to watch, I don't know, maybe different generations here, guys, but I used to watch, like, Friends or Seinfeld or whatever, all the time. These kids don't watch Friends and Seinfeld. They watch Twitch and they watch other gamers game. That's what they do. And it's just a different, I don't understand it. Still, as I sit here tonight, I don't understand it, but I do get it. Like, they are doing that, and it's I find it to be completely amazing. And you're right, Jesse, when you talk about it, the doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your athleticism, doesn't matter your religion. I guess these days you say it doesn't matter your political affiliations, right? Nothing matters, and you can build that community, which is phenomenal. So let's kind of transition here for a few more minutes. How should we start? So if you're a middle school, you're a high school, even a college, prep school, listening to this, and you're just about to get started, what would you guys see as the next steps? I just threw out student questionnaire that Sultan threw out as like a great idea, but what are some hurdles? What are some challenges? How should we get started? Tim, you want to get us started on that? What would you think, and based on your experience, because I'm sure you've seen some schools start from scratch and then show up at your track meet. So how would you recommend they go about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the very base level, it just starts with passion, like we mentioned. So I think maybe you get a base understanding of what that level of passion is at your school. So maybe you, like you just mentioned, John, maybe you do post out a questionnaire or an email blast, and you say who's interested in signing up for esports. And I know that the schools, Union City, for example, that's exactly how they started, and they got Coach Jerry over there. He got way more signups than he expected. So he had a ton of signups, and then they ended up doing a tryout because they knew where they were at. So I think it just starts with that passion, and I think programs now that have been around for a while, like we mentioned before, started with a couple passionate students who were maybe setting up like an Xbox or a GameCube or something in one of the classrooms after school. So I think it just starts with that passion, and then when you as a group of students, when you find maybe a teacher at your school who either understands it at some level or just sees that you and your friends are super passionate about it and is willing to help, I think that's a huge step. So having that teacher that can maybe be the go-between between passionate students and a principal who might not understand exactly what's going on, so is maybe pushing back a little bit. I think having that teacher, that administrator at your school that has a little bit of passion is huge. And Sultan and Jesse, I don't know if you want to continue on that, but that's my 2 cents there.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. Coming from that place of being that student that has started, and whether you're a student or whether you're administration and you're trying to start an esports program, I think the biggest thing is just finding that interest and seeing if do you have that community on campus, and if not, how do you create that community on campus. But almost everywhere you go, there's a community that either wants to watch people play games or that wants to play games themselves, whether it's at a competitive level or if it's on a friendly level. We have two distinct different entities on Snooze campus. That we have our gaming club. They love to play games. They play games for fun. They love watching games. And then we have our competitive gamers, and that's a smaller list of students that want to compete at a really high level. And we try to offer both. But the thing is that our space on campus is open to both. We allow every single student to come in and play on our computers, join the atmosphere. So it's just creating that community, understanding, do you have that community on campus? And then it's just prospering that community, giving them the support that they need, whether it's coaching, administering, whether they need someone organizing their schedules for their practices or even their classes, just helping them out any way that you can, academically, competitively. I think that's really what students are asking for at this time.
That's great, Sultan. You know, we are going to move to a Q&A here in a couple seconds after the last few questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add them to the Q&A box. You know, what another element too, just for those or most people I'm sure are New Hampshire academics. We did open up the Helix Esports Academy here in Exeter, New Hampshire, and part of our intention is to help schools academically here and programs throughout New Hampshire, even if you're outside of the Exeter vicinity, to help build your program. And the one thing I found with esports that I think, you know, the three of you so graciously are and generous with your time here tonight is the growth of esports is good for everybody if you're passionate about the industry. So, you know, our intention here at Helix Esports is to help grow the sport in New Hampshire. We're going to be starting a LinkedIn group for it to try and help schools get along in programs, whether it be parks and recs, whether it be boys and girls clubs, traditional sports organizations that want to get an esports component going, as well as middle schools and high schools, prep schools, and even work with the colleges very closely on their programming. So we do want to try and help drive that in New Hampshire and can be a resource for you or your program. We like to compare it as well as far as the center is concerned. The way we like to look at it is, you know, not every high school can build an ice rink for their hockey team, but they can go rent ice at an ice rink or use facilities, and we want to be able to provide those facilities to programs. So it's not a limiting factor for them to build a program is the cost associated with it. So we want to really try and help the community in that particular way. So yeah, I know that we have one question that came in a couple times here that I just want to bring up. The question is about the stigma of esports, and that may be related to a couple of things. One is, you know, safety, right? Of online communications with other people. You may not know who's there. It could be related to the game, the rating of the game. You know, there are definitely some first-person, third-person shooter games that exist out there in esports. Can you guys talk to us a little bit about the stigma? If you're talking to your parental group, so it's one thing if the administrators go, this is great, we want our students, our students want it, so we want it. But now you got to go to the parents and talk to the parents about why esports and how it's going to be safe in the games and all that kind of stuff. Can you share a little bit about your experience there, Tim, and with your high schools you've been dealing with and communication with parents?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, so we offered, as I mentioned before, we offered Overwatch, League of Legends, Super Smash Ultimate, Rocket League, and Fortnite. All games were pretty much accepted right off the bat by administrations. I think there was some pushback with Fortnite because, as you mentioned, there is that stigma attached to it because they're shooting. But I mean, I think maybe at the middle school level that's an appropriate challenge to overcome. I think at the high school level and the college level, I think especially at the college level, individuals are able to think for themselves. But at the end of the day, I think we really have to take away. I think the positives vastly outweigh the negatives in that situation. If you're on a Fortnite duo with someone, you are, as we mentioned numerous times on this call, improving your communication skills. You're working on teamwork. You're a part of that community. So I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives there. I think there are some games that should maybe be considered at certain levels. For example, like maybe middle school players should not be competitively playing Rainbow Six Siege, where there's like a little bit of blood and gore. But for me, that's kind of it. And I think Fortnite's an appropriate game because of the cartoon characters, and I think the positives outweigh the negatives. And Sultan and Jesse, if you want to comment on that as well, but.
Yeah, you touched a little bit on the game and the game ratings. Can you guys talk to us a little bit about the safety aspect of it? You know, for middle school kids or high school kids getting involved in esports and the stigma attached to
Uh, I think I can, because I generally, when I find myself having this conversation in a day-to-day life, I kind of go with where Tim goes, and I immediately jump to what games are appropriate for what age group. And as I've been working more with students and blending it into my passion for video games, I realized that the title of the game isn't necessarily the biggest issue, because that's a constant. What most people are worried about is the interactions that happen during the games. And
that? Correct.
you can't control what other people do. You can only control what you do. The nice part about making leagues with these games is now every team and every member is part of a league. And the same way with any other traditional sport, you sign a contract and you're held accountable for your actions, whether it's on or off the field, whether it's on or off the PC. So that kind of nips that in the bud a little bit. You can't say 100% it's guaranteed you're not going to have a bad interaction, but at least now, whereas if your son or daughter is playing in the basement, if they have a negative interaction, the only thing you can do is turn the TV off. Now there's more accountability. So that's
Yeah.
one thing I enjoy about it.
Yeah, that's great. I'll dive into this one, Sultan, to get the extension of this one, but then I want to kind of turn around based on some of the questions we're getting in. But I think one of the benefits of having an esports arena, or Tim, in your environment, we have a track and field meet and the teams are there. I'm assuming you have referees too. It's a whole different climate than if everybody's at home playing on this tournament and it's open from 8-year-olds to 50-year-olds, right? It seems like a whole different environment when it's organized events. Is that your experience too, Sultan? I mean, you guys built an arena. The interactions must be a lot different when you're there in person playing, even with your own team, even if the other team's remote. You know who you're playing, right?
I think in terms of in-person events, there's much more camaraderie also with your teammates, and also there's a little bit of it's much more watched and it's much more organized when you have everybody in person. You have many people watching over your, whether it's younger students or younger children, that you don't want them getting into big trouble or saying things that they shouldn't be saying. The great thing, as Jesse kind of brought on about the leagues, is that when you're in a league, when you're in some sort of tournament, you're going to have administration watching over you. If you say something that you shouldn't be saying online, which you can't really check when you're playing by yourself, but in these leagues, you can ban that person from playing. If they're saying something that's not supposed to be said, or if they're being very inappropriate, then you don't have to have them play. And usually you can deal with that as a league level, you can deal with that as a coaching level, you can deal with that in many different sorts of ways. Whereas if you're just having your kid go downstairs in the basement and play games, like, you can't really monitor that as well. And I think the great thing about some of the coaching styles that we have seen in esports is that we're not telling our students to go drop the F-bomb on everybody that's in their games they're not doing well. We're trying to teach them to have a good mental in the game, because in more cases than not, having a good mental is much more applicable than having, the best shooting skills or whatever other in-game specific skills. It's having a great mentality towards the game and a good positive outlook that'll keep you going forward and keep you competing at a high level. So that's my 2 cents on
that's a great way to look at it. But I want to throw the kind of the big curveball that we've all been thrown in 2020, which is, okay, now we're dealing with COVID. There's a little bit of a new reality setting in here that maybe these teams cannot get together, they cannot play these events together. So how have you guys adjusted, or how should people consider adjusting? I mean, certainly, hopefully COVID will come and pass, and there'll be everything will be back to sporting events happening, both esports and live traditional sporting events and everything else. But for right now, there's a COVID restriction, right? So I know, Jesse, as example, we were talking, when we met here at our center a few weeks ago, how your team's getting together remotely, but still trying to execute what you've been able to do, which I guess in some sports you can't really get on the field if you're COVID shut down, but in esports you still can. But how have you guys been adjusting to the COVID reality at the collegiate level?
Did you want to take that first, Sultan, or do you want me to take it?
You can go for it, Jesse.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So the nice part about video games is that it doesn't need to be in person. It's obviously 150 times better in experience. If it is, it's more fun. It's like Sultan said, there's more camaraderie when you actually get together and you can enjoy the game in person. But yeah, COVID's unprecedented, and it's really cool that my biggest passion in life didn't get shot in the foot like everything else seemed to. We don't have to have a bubble. We don't have to have strict new rules or guidelines. We lose a little bit of the camaraderie, and I'm very much looking forward to getting that back when we all are in person. But I don't feel like we lost too much by having to go completely remote.
So I'm assuming at Great Bay and SNU, like, are your teams connecting remotely on Zoom, on Discord? I learned what Discord was recently. So, what are the tools you guys are using to set up in a remote setting in the interim until you actually can get the teams together live?
Yeah, we definitely make use of Discord more than anything, but Sultan, you want to take that one?
Yeah, definitely. just talking about Discord. Discord is the absolute lifesaver of esports in general. It's really the home to esports. I remember starting off Skype. Skype was the old Discord for me, and we would get together. We would just be playing games together, and then we found out about Discord, the new application, and it's really been a second community almost. It's an online community where you can sit with yourself in a certain group, and you can invite as many people as possible. I know this new Discord, this new esports Discord, we have over 200 members in that Discord, and it's still growing every single year. When we get new freshmen, when we have alumni that stay in that Discord, they get updates on all of our matches. We have our competitive teams in there, and it's such a awesome platform because you can use speech, you can use talk, you can have text, you can have your own meetings like this, or you can include face, you can share links. There's so many different aspects that you can use Discord for. And I think John's showing you on the screen right now, it's an amazing program that allows you to just talk with so many different people. Honestly, Discord is my new email. I've talked to so many different program directors around the country, just scheduling scrimmages, scheduling different time frames for our matches. It's really the savior of esports online right now, and it's a great second home to the in-person events that we have.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, I learned what Discord was. I was sharing you with my Discord recently, and we did an esports tournament recently, virtual, and we used Discord, and I was just amazed at how familiar the esports athletes were with the tool. And I'd never heard of it. And for, you know, I'd heard of Slack before, right? The Microsoft Slack product. I think Microsoft owns it. And it's very comparable to that, but it was very specific to that environment. You can do the video chats, the calls, and I think that's how the teams are getting together, and great tool there. Let's move to costs associated. So, you know, if you're building an esports team, what are some of the costs that you may need to think about? Obviously, I'm sitting in a center now with 32 workstations, fiber internet, you know, all that kind of stuff, but you know, that may take it to a different level. But what are some of the main costs? Like, how much does it cost to register for a tournament? How much does it cost to be in a league? You know, things like that. And that may be different collegiately. So I'm not sure if Jesse and Sullivan, you guys have that experience at collegiate level, because I'm sure you're playing in collegiate leagues. They're very, you know, specifically set up. But Tim, can you talk to that a little bit from your experience with high schools in Mass and in New Jersey, and what some are the typical costs that they have, and how much it costs to play in these events?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are several different high school esports online leagues that you can join. Just to rattle off a few: High School Esports League, Play Versus, NASIF. There's a couple different ones you can join. All of them have different costs associated. I'm not exactly sure what that cost is. I believe it's like a per season basis. And I think they do it by number of heads on your team. So I would visit, if you are wondering, I would visit those websites: Play Versus, High School Esports League, NASIF, just to check what those costs are. In terms of coming to our facility, we had it very cheap. We had it about $3.50 per hour per head, $3.50 per hour per head to come in and practice in the facility, and then maybe like a small cost for game day, just because we had referees who came out, we had a stream going, so just to cover those additional costs. So it was very cheap. But yeah, so not a overwhelming cost associated with getting started. I think if you're going to, like you mentioned, John, if you're going to start up, if you're really looking to go all in and maybe start your own center at your school, I think that's a different cost. And I think it's probably easier for a college to do that because they have maybe the funds to do so. So I think at the high school level, it's a bit more difficult to go all out in that direction. But from the collegiate standpoint, I think Sultan or Jesse, you guys could probably answer a little better.
Yeah, there are leagues too, right? So, maybe associations at the collegiate level as well as the high school level that I know I did a little research on that schools can do as well. But I think part of the idea here academically, anyway, at least at the middle school, high school levels, is try and keep the cost down as low as possible to have it, again, going back to the big equalizer. You don't have to have a ton of money to participate in the varsity sport necessarily, right? So Sultan, Jesse, anything more on the costs associated with esports from you guys?
Yeah, I can at least talk on the collegiate side. I know for example, for SNU and most colleges, startup costs for an esports program can be high depending on the computers. If you look at the background of John, those computers, they are expensive. I mean, it's true, but also the fact that in high school is that you don't have to build that center. You can use these centers for renting space, and you don't have to build the entire program out from there. It's really low over time costs. It's not the only thing you're going to be paying for is jerseys, is maybe some utilities for mice, keyboards, but most of the time students have it themselves, or you go to the LAN center. And other than that, it's just having that one coach or having those few coaches that are overlooking the program and making sure those students are supported. And that's really the only costs that are associated. You don't have to buy basketballs every year, footballs every year. You don't have to rent out a basketball space, which could be thousands of dollars every year. It's much smaller costs, I think, at especially the high school level.
Great. Thank you about that. And so I guess in closing, I got a big question. Part of what we're trying to do is fire up New Hampshire to kind of get on with the esports opportunity. And there's certainly a lot of people, both on this call as well as not on this call, who would love to see esports grow because they see the students wanting it and want to grow that industry. Can you guys, just in closing, what would be the one thing you would recommend if you're an administrator, if you're a parent, if you're, that you should probably do leaving this call to take the next step to drive esports here in New Hampshire? Tim, let's start with you. We'll go around the horn real quick.
Yeah, I'll kick us off. I think it's just, and I mean, this is how I started to understand the esports industry as well. It's just take the time to do even the slightest bit of research. I think as soon as you dive in, you're going to be hit with so much knowledge, because there's just so much out there, especially nowadays where we're in this COVID environment where other sports have not been able to. I think nowadays it's coming back a little bit, but where other sports were not able to thrive, I think esports was right in the limelight. So there's so much information out there for you to consume. So I think you can learn really, really quick. But in order to do that, you need to actually go out there and say, all right, I'm going to do the research. And I think that'll be a really helpful first step.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Sultan, how about you?
I think from a parent's point of view, definitely get involved with what your kids are interested in. If you hear them talking about a game they play, like really pay attention to it, see how much they're involved and passionate about it, and then use that information and talk to the principals at their school, talk to the teachers, see who's interested, and try to just get the word out, because that's what I did as a student. I talked to so many different faculty and staff until finally they started listening to me, and I started showing them, like, these are the stats. We have so many students on campus that's passionate about this. So just get involved, talk with as many different people as possible, and learn as much as you can.
Yeah, on that one, Sultan, I just recommend no one challenge their kids to a game. Just don't even try that. I tried that. That did not work out so well for me. I could still beat maybe a basketball, but that didn't work. Jesse, how about you? What's your closing statement to get New Hampshire going in esports?
I think the most important thing you could do is try and get out of the mentality of thinking video games are just a game. If you can think of video games like you think of every other sport, if you see your son or daughter out there shooting the basketball for 3 hours a night and they want to get really good and they don't want to play professionally, but use that opportunity to maybe get some scholarships or use it as a path to get a college education, you can think of video games in that same light. It can be used in the exact same way. I'm a local kid. I grew up in Hampton. I graduated in New Hampshire, and Great Bay we actively recruit all local kids. If I had had that opportunity, I would have been running there. So yeah.
That's phenomenal. And certainly, appreciate you guys coming on tonight. Appreciate the panelists. I mean, the way I look at it in closing is, we would love people that are attending here tonight, and even you three as panelists, to continue to help us be thought leaders of esports here in New Hampshire. We plan on running a continuous webinar with some other guests to really educate ourselves and educate the community and educate New Hampshire on esports. So if you're listening to this podcast, you want to participate with us, we're looking for as many people as possible to kind of jump on the New Hampshire esports bandwagon. And let's help, as Steve Young talked a little bit earlier, use it as a stepping stone for our communities, for our youth, and really engage them in technology. Because at the end of the day, that's the way I look at it is, engaging the kids in esports is really engaging them in the universe of esports, but also all the technologies behind it, the opportunities in STEM related programs, and all of those types of things. So I appreciate everybody joining us tonight. We're at the top of the hour, and I look forward to hearing from everybody. If you have any questions beyond the Q&A here, please feel free to hit us up. And you can also visit us at helixesportsacademy.com as well if you want to learn more about our academy here in Exeter, New Hampshire. Thanks a lot, and good evening.